The AU, Vincent Karega is Rwanda's High Commissioner to South Africa, and Dr. David Monyae, an international relations political analyst. Welcome to you both, and thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. It's a discussion that's been ongoing for a very long time, the most important, I suppose, since 2002. Let's talk about these reforms that have been suggested. First of all, has there been enough consultation on them? I'll start with you, High Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Enough, I don't know how to quantify enough. What I know, while my president is the chair of the reforms, he has been consulting at different levels. Ministers do consult at the council levels, technocrats, and also he has put in place a team that comprises of experts from government background, civil society background, business background, multilateral organization background, who have been traveling and assisting technically heads of state discussions and so on. And he has been exchanging a lot with his peer and Africans before taking decisions and moving forward.
There was some anxiety, Dr. Monyae, ahead of this Addis Ababa meeting about whether all the important countries will be there and if there is going to be agreement on all of the proposed reforms. And some of it does really turn it down to consultation. What is your response to that, especially after what the High Commissioner has just said?
I think there has been a number of changes from the then OAU to AU, and the process of deeper reforms have been going on for a while. I think we have seen, heard and read more about what's going on, but the nature of our continental institution is that it's interstate level. Member states have to report to their parliaments, and it really depends with each and every country in terms of consultation at a national level with all other changes that takes place at the A level. It's much more divorced from the people on the ground. It's much more, I think most of us who read on what's happening. We're familiar with those issues. Because
there are people who are asking about the relevance of the African Union now. Is it a fair question? Because if you're to undertake reforms, that, as you say, it would mean you would have established some form of legitimacy on the ground.
Indeed, and we are represented by people and that we elect, and it all depends on what they're discussing. I think the last 5 years or so, I think we have had a lot of discussions. Even the African Parliament, which is right here in Midrand, we hear a lot of what's going on. And at times, there isn't much interaction in terms of direct people representation and hearing and putting in what they want to see changing, other than putting pressure on their governments that represents them in these important institutions. So it really depends how active one's government is and the role played by all other stakeholders.
Hi, Commissioner Karega, as you said, it's been a passion project for President Kagame. He has been very steadfast in saying, let's change the AU, let's give it teeth, let's make it more purposeful. And we'll look at the various reforms in just a moment. But in terms of popular support, is there a feeling now that the all-important countries, there were countries that were being looked at, especially the major contributors, are they fully behind these reforms?
I think the most important is that all Africans, since the creation of the African Union, have expressed the need to have an Africa that works. Even the population that are supposed to be consulted, whenever they talk of Africa, you hear that they want an AU that is effective and that is working. The reforms did not start last year. What President Kagame has been saying and trying to do is even most of the things that have been probably lagging in drawers and in shelves, how can we make sure that all the consultations, the previous consultations, the previous studies carried can now be streamlined and be implemented, because we need to move from rhetoric to concrete action.
I'm
so
glad
his
you talk
focus
about
was
implementation.
more on action, not a 1 year kind of everything starting from scratch.
Two very key words that you've said, implementation and action.
Exactly.
Sanctions have been proposed to ensure that member countries pay their way. That's been talked about for a long time. Are we really expecting it to happen this time round?
We see it happening, not at the same speed. For example, since last year to this year, we realized that by member countries paying, at least 3/4 of their budget has been this time funded by member states, while before it was 70% externally funded. So we have reversed the trend, and if this trend continue, we may be fully funded, self-reliant organization just by implementing what we agree upon as a continent, and that will yield a lot of results according to the expectations of Africans to see their organization becoming African and deciding on behalf of the Africans.
Dr. Monyae, the High Commissioner says there's been a reversal. That means up to 9 November, 50% of member states have paid their membership fees. But just looking in terms of the penalties that have been suggested, cautionary, intermediate, comprehensive, is this enough teeth to get reluctant countries to come on board and pay their dues?
That is not sufficient in my view. I think more could be done. I mean, by just really cutting countries that don't pay. I think you cannot expect a vibrant AU with members who don't pay their due. And we understand
cutting them out of the organization or denying them airtime during discussions?
Denying them airtime, I think that's the best way. And forcing them one way or another to really pay, and also understand circumstances. There are certain countries who don't have resources. And there is a need in terms of the formula. You pay according to your GDP. And therefore, I think it shouldn't be difficult for any country to really pay a minimum amount that goes with the size of your economy.
Well, one of those that have been suggested is the imposition of a 0.2% levy on eligible imported goods to help countries to do that. Have countries been able to consult internally on whether or not they'll be able to do this, High Commissioner?
They've consulted, and those with issues have also raised the issues, and other formula are also envisaged for specific case by case. If the 0.2% may not work and something else may work, it came in as a technical formula that is reasonable, that looks a bit like something that is applied already in the ECOWAS, and it sounded quite popular. But whoever may face domestic challenges with it, there's also room for discussion and for further arrangement, as long as the member committed show the way they are going to contribute. It's not just a one jacket fits all, and it's not work done and that's it. It's also work in progress, and it's dynamic. So whenever a reform does not produce the expected effect, it could also be reviewed and be reformed again. But we cannot be in a world of reforms without action. We'll be trying actions, and if through action we learn lessons that things are not working as expected, but then we readjust again.
I need to ask this question though, Dr. Monyae, why the inertia? We are continually dependent on donor funding for the operations of the AU because of member states. So why the continued inertia?
The lack of a serious Pan-African spirit, the lack of seriousness by some of our politicians, that they are so drawn into domestic issues without a clear understanding that what is domestic these days is by and large international. All right, it's so regional.
Let's talk about that commitment that is required to push through these reforms, including the tenure of the next Commission chair, which is Egypt. There are doubts expressed by some whether or not they'll want to continue with pushing through these transformations. But that'll be in a moment after the break.